everyone. I am so excited today to be talking to author Josh Dean, and his book is The Taking of K-129, which I have it on Audible. He has the hard copy there, so he can hold that up. There we go. And anyway, I am so excited to talk to you about this. I was so excited when you said yes, because I really, really wanted to talk about this book.
Well, I'm glad. Happy to do it.
Yeah, I mean, as anyone can tell when they look at my videos, I'm a history buff. I love history. I love fiction, but man, when history is so good, sometimes, sometimes it reads better than any fiction you can make up. And this book is. I mean, this book read better than any, amount of fiction I can read, because you can't make this shit up. You just can't.
Right. You really can't.
So, first of all, when I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so right up my alley. I have two sons that are vets, and I love everything military. I started reading military books back in my 20s, and, they first started like The Hunt for Red October. That was a big one, and then the movie came out, and, so I love these kind of stories, and I needed to know, like, how did you fall upon this story, basically?
It's one of those, I don't write about intelligence, really, but it's like a pet interest of mine. It's one of those things I've always wanted to cover. I'm sort of a generalist. I've written about just about everything in my career as a magazine journalist.
I saw that on your website. You have written just about everything.
Yeah, I don't have a specialty, but I've always wanted to write about intelligence, and this is one of those stories that I was always, like, peripherally aware of, but had never spent the time to, like, actually sit down and figure out, like, I knew that this crazy operation had happened, but I wasn't sure what that story was. And when I started, doing even a little bit of reading about it, I thought, exactly what you just said. I was like, could this be real? Like, this is like it's almost an unbelievable premise for a spy fiction book or a movie. You wouldn't believe it. And it turned out to be true. And I felt that, like, though there had been some books done, typically more niche books, or had been done before a lot of the operation had been declassified. It just seemed like there was an opportunity to do a definitive account of one of the more outlandish episodes in the history of the CIA.
Yeah, and an interesting side note, I have an uncle who was in a sub in 1968 in the Pacific.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Do you know which one?
I don't. Well, okay, here's the thing. He refuses to talk about it, because I really was thinking about getting in touch with him. I'm in Pennsylvania. He lives in Pennsylvania. I'm not close with him. My dad died a long time ago, and it was his brother, so I haven't been in contact with him in a while. But I was born in 1964, and I remember, when it was happening. I remember when he was there, and when my grandmother wouldn't hear from him for an extended period of time, and everybody was kind of freaking out. It was during Vietnam, and yeah. He didn't talk about it. He was like, I can't talk about it.
68 was a historically bad year for some. There were 4 submarines that sank that year, which I think is the most in a year outside of, World War II. But in the Cold War era, the U.S. lost a sub, the Soviets lost a sub, the French lost a sub, and I think maybe the Israelis. It was a really bad year. Just coincidentally, that all happened in one year. I don't think it had any. There was no thread between them.
No thread. Yeah, I remember him talking about life on a sub. And I think he was under a year, actually, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, 6 months to a year. It was a long time. I do know that, and. And then he got out. He was in the Navy, and then he got out, and he was an engineer. He did his schooling and everything. But he wouldn't. As I got older, and I would try to talk to him about it, he wouldn't talk about it. So whatever. Well, and I was like, I was going to say, hey, I'm interviewing, and then I was like, he's not going to talk about this. I just know him. He won't talk about it. So.
Well, tell him to pick the book up. I'd love to know what he thinks.
Yeah, you know what? I should do that. I should definitely talk to him about that. He lives in Gettysburg. I'll have to figure that out. But anyway, so I thought that was kind of interesting because, a lot of my family was in the service. I come from a huge military family. And then I said I have 2 sons. I was a military wife for a while. So military is kind of in my, But this, and I've been thinking all morning, like, how I wanted to do this interview, because last night I went and watched the movie that's on Amazon. And
the documentary.
I did. I watched the documentary. Yep. And I want to tell everybody out there, like, that documentary will not make sense unless you read this book. It was not done that well. It really was. I felt so in the know because I'm reading your book. I mean, of course, it was cool. It was cool to see some of the things that I could only envision from reading, you know? But I was like, I don't want to tell, because when I saw the title to this book, of course, what grabbed me was the Howard Hughes connection. Right. And so it was like, you know what? Let's not go there. Let's let everybody find out the way I had to find out. And it is what grabbed me from the title, because I didn't know. And I don't think a lot of people, even if you watch a documentary, it does not answer it. It really doesn't. So
right. No, I think
read the book.
I said at the end of the book, like, I would definitely recommend people watch the documentary afterwards, because it will, among other things, the animations about how the engineering worked are very helpful. And I know one of the hardest things for me as a writer was trying to understand the engineering that went into this, because it's incredibly complicated and very difficult to pull off and big, and it's almost hard to picture. So I had to really understand it and try and convey it in a way that I thought someone who wasn't an engineer could read, but at the same time, it wasn't going to be, embarrassing to an engineer who did pick it up and thought, like, well, this is an oversimplification. Like, this guy didn't even bother. And I think, from what I heard, I had some engineers read it. They didn't feel that way at all. But I do think that once you've read it, maybe you have a picture in your mind. But to watch the documentary, then you're like, oh, okay, I get it exactly. Like that. They did a really nice job with the computer animations in there.
Yes, I loved seeing that crane. Like actually seeing the picture of it. Like I said, I'm imagining it, but actually seeing, they did a really good diagram. And then they had a person standing next to it, so you could get the idea of how big this thing was.
The scale. Right. Yeah. So it's, I think it's a good supplement to the book. Hopefully, my goal with the book was to, primarily was to kind of give it the boys in the boat treatment, which is more to focus on the characters and the personalities, because there had been a book that focused very much on the engineering and the naval side of it. And, it was an incredibly complicated thing that you could really get overwhelmed by the scope of the story. And, I thought, like, if I could tell it through the characters, then it becomes much more compelling and approachable. And even if you don't really understand all of the science and engineering going on, like, the characters themselves bring it to life. So hopefully that works.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I didn't read anything about you when I was listening to it. So, and kudos to your Audible guy. Okay. Amazing.
Okay, good. I'll tell him.
Yeah. And you know what I do? Like, I kind of play around with it. I go fast, go slow. If I'm in traffic and I can't think, I go slower. If I'm walking around the house, I can put it on double speed. That's what I love about Audible. But no, he did a great job. He kept the suspense up and everything that was going on. But so I didn't know anything about you, except for that, yes, you said you would do this, and I was so excited. And then as I'm listening, I'm like, this guy's a journalist. I just know it. I can tell these history guys that are journalists, because you take the whole story. Instead of just telling, like, a history teacher would be like facts.
Right.
Okay. I got to learn in the beginning, like, what is life like on a sub? What do they have to go through? You answered so many questions. Like I said, my uncle was on a sub, and I was like, wow, you don't really understand. I actually was in a sub at a museum, and you do get a kind of a concept of, like, like how close the quarters.
Very claustrophobic.
Yeah, it's a little claustrophobic. Okay, so, and my uncle's a big guy. He's like 6'2", so I don't know how that worked out for him, but it's like very close quarters, but just understanding, like, eating, basic essential things, and then day after day after, I mean, I love how you did that. But yeah, I knew you were a journalist because you took it from every side, and it builds and it builds, and I learned so much about history, not just about this, because you go into what's going on in the world at this time. It's really hard for us, especially my age. Like I said, I would have been 4. I knew about Vietnam, but we didn't know about, and the Cold War, not the Cold, we were kind of in the midst of it, but not really understanding, because now you look at it and you're like, Russia, why was everybody scared of Russia? I don't get that.
Right. When in fact we were pointing a bunch of missiles at each other. I mean, we still are pointing a bunch of missiles at each other, but it seemed tenser back then, although getting tense again.
Although, yeah, a different kind of thing now. But, and I guess the interesting thing about it in your story was, like, how the Russians treated this, especially from the families' perspectives. it was talk about the Cold War. It was also a cold time in how their government was treating their people. And
right, yeah. I mean, the Soviet government was, an oppressive, authoritarian leader. I mean, a sense of quote unquote communism was supposed to be about the people, but it was really a sort of military autocratic state run by the Communist Party, and they felt no obligation to tell their people the truth. Clearly, obviously, the United States did and still does hide secrets from its people when they're deemed to be in national security, and maybe in some cases not justly, but in most cases you could. In the Soviet Union, there's no responsibility to tell the truth to people. So like if something went wrong, they didn't feel like they had to like talk to journalists or
right.
even necessarily tell the families. So I think when this submarine sank, the families didn't really know the true story for a long time, and the men weren't treated with the respect they deserved, and the widows weren't given the money that they probably should have been given, and they almost made it seem like it was their fault and it was some accident, as opposed to people serving on a submarine on what was considered to be a combat mission. And anytime a sub went out with missiles on board, it was a combat mission because its job was to stay out there, and if war breaks out, you launch those missiles and you try and stay hidden, and then if the 3 months passes and you come back to harbor, hopefully you haven't killed anybody. But right. It was a very demanding service, and I think Americans, even back then, the U.S. and the Soviet submariners had a lot of respect for each other because they understood how difficult that life is. And I've also only been on a sub at a museum, but it's very cramped and claustrophobic, and then you imagine what it's like with 100 other people on there, and then outside you is just the ocean. So it's not like you're at a museum, you can kind of pop your head out and go, okay, I get to go home. They don't get to go home for months at a time, and on a nuclear sub, they might not even surface for weeks. It was a tough duty. It still is a very tough. I have a lot of respect for anyone who serves on a submarine.
Yeah. You know what? It kind of gave me a little bit more respect for my uncle, I have to say. Like I said, I'm not that close to him. As a kid, I didn't really like him that much. He's not going to watch this, so I can say that. But it's like, I don't know. He was a very cold guy. But I'm kind of getting a sense of that time and maybe, that hardness. I certainly saw it in my sons in the military. Anybody who's served in any kind of conflict, you come out of it with something. You just do. And right. That was a bad time, and I really didn't realize that either. But, okay, just so people get a concept of like what we're talking about here. We're talking about a Russian, sub that we don't even know what happened to it, really, right?
No, that's sort of one of those mysteries that endures today. It sank for reasons that remain mysterious.
Yeah, okay, and it sank 3 miles
under the Pacific. Yeah. In a very remote part of the Pacific.
That's the other thing that the documentary was kind of good at, because it shows you like, you sit there and you're like, try to comprehend 3 miles down. Okay, you can't. But the guy they showed it on the one screen, I was like, and what we were able to do was salvage a piece of it and bring it up to the, because I kept thinking, as I'm reading and everything, it's like, oh my God, this is taking so long. 6 years to build it. And then I'm like, right. Wow, why can't they do this? And then when I saw the picture of it, I'm like, yeah, that looks like it might have taken a while. That definitely may have taken a while.
It took a few years to get things going.
Yeah. First of all, for the engineers to come up with how they're going to make it, and, right. How they're going to pick up a piece like that. And, so, and it broke in half, or sort of in half, right?
Yep.
And we only went after the one piece.
Well, it actually broke in, I think, 3 pieces, okay. Or maybe more, but there was one sort of central section that they really wanted. That was the part that contained the missiles and would have had the command quarters, so the code-breaking machines. The really valuable pieces of intelligence were in a sort of central section around what they call the conning tower. That's the part of the submarine that sticks up,
right.
Looks like a right. tower. So that part was fairly intact. That's the part they were after. So then I think there was a part of the front and a bow and stern were also broken off and considered to be less valuable.
Right. What did you like about, I know you conducted all these interviews with some of the guys that were still here, and, what did you find out that, I know you probably find out a lot of stuff about this, but what was the most mind-blowing, would you have to say, like when you were writing this story?
Well, I'm not sure if it's what I found out from them or just what I found out. You know, I didn't have an appreciation for what this really meant in practical terms. Like, the thing that they were getting weighed about 2 million pounds. And it was 3 miles under the ocean. So 2 million pounds laying 3 miles. In the history of naval salvage, no submarine had ever been salvaged under 200 feet at that point, 200 feet. And no object had been retrieved at 3 miles except for the CIA had recently recovered a film capsule from the Cronauer spy satellite at that depth. So we had the capability to get to that depth with robots and some early autonomous vehicles. But this was going to be picking up a gigantic hunk of steel at exponentially greater depth than anything that had been done before. And it was going to have to be done in the wide open because you can't like secretly put a huge ship out in the middle of the ocean and make it invisible. Like obviously the Soviets are going to see it out there and they're going to wonder, what is this thing? And if they know that it's the CIA or the Navy, then they're going to think, okay, they're trying to steal our submarine because the Soviets had lost it and we found it. And they were always suspicious that we may have known where it was. And it turns out they were even suspicious of the Glomar Explorer, the name of the ship that went to get it. But so it was an incredible engineering challenge. And then there was the intelligence problem, which was how do we keep the secret? Because it's a big ship. And that's how Howard Hughes came in, of course. They said, well, we're going to tell people we're mining the ocean, and Howard Hughes is going to be the cover because he's this like crazy eccentric billionaire who's known for doing outlandish things. And nobody's going to doubt Howard Hughes. And it turned out it worked perfectly. The entire world believed that Howard Hughes was mining the ocean when really the CIA was trying to steal a submarine. It's pretty amazing.
It's crazy. It's a crazy story. But yeah, I guess interviewing the guys was a lot of fun though, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, sometimes people ask me like, what's your biggest tip for writing historical fiction or nonfiction? And it's like if you can find a story where the people are still alive, it helps a lot.
Yes.
And, in this case, enough time had passed that people were pretty. I won't say enthusiastic, but at least were willing to talk.
Right. How long did it take you to write it?
It was about a 3-year project, but the writing was probably more or less a year.
More or less, okay. Because I think whenever I read a book like, about this kind of stuff from you guys, I always think, oh my God, like to take all that information that you've gotten and then condense it down into a readable story. I mean, that's the art of it, okay? That right there is the art.
Well, I sometimes look at the stacks of paper and all the files and things and I can't quite remember how it all came together, but it was, probably like 2 years of reporting and reading and interviewing and then more or less a year of writing. But it was like stops and starts, and I was doing other things at the same time.
Right, like having a real job too at the same time.
Yeah, I was writing magazine stories.
Right. All right. Let's talk about your first book, Show Dog. Okay. I did not read this book, but I'm fascinated by it because I read some parts of it, and I was like, "What a great concept!" Because who doesn't love a good show dog? Okay.
It's a slight difference in subject, though.
I know, but I don't know. It's a fun, because you get this serious stuff, but then you get the show dog, and I love dogs, and I have a dog, and, I think everybody can relate. And I watch those shows. I'm one of those people that actually likes those shows.
Well, yeah, what I usually tell people is if you've seen the movie Best in Show, it's sort of like the real life version of that.
Right. I mean, well, you write about dogs. I mean, I saw on your website you like to write about dogs, right?
Or there was a period in which I did, yeah. I kind of like go from weird subject to weird subject, and there was a time when I did. I haven't really in a few years now, but now it's more submarines, and who knows what's next?
Who knows? But so did you take it from the point of the dog, or did you take it from the point of the owner of the dog?
Sort of a combination of both.
Okay.
You can't really write from a dog's perspective.
Don't say that.
You can't ask a dog questions.
I don't know. I've seen some movies that, people try to get in the mind of a dog, so.
Well, and there have been some really successful books about that where people try and understand the psychology or what, tell people what their dog is thinking, but this was more like the people around, I guess in a similar way that this one was it was told more through the people, like owners and breeders and handlers. But also probably I spent so much time around that dog that maybe people got some sense of what was in his head. He had a lot of personality.
Yeah, he did. Because I have a golden doodle, a mini golden doodle, right? And I've had Cocker Spaniels in the past, but I have a mini golden doodle. And I swear this dog is the smartest dog I've ever had. I swear he knows exactly what I'm thinking and before I say it. Like, it's like he's always a step ahead of me. And I don't know. I've been more fascinated with him than any other dog that I've owned in the past. And when I saw that, I was like, you know what? We're just weird dog people. Like, I look at him and I'm like, I say to my son all the time, I'm like, look, he's not happy. We have to make him happy. He's like, Mom, how do you know that? I'm like, I can just tell. He's just not happy right now.
There are probably no two species that have a relationship the way that humans and dogs do. Like we bred them from wild animals, and they've been living alongside us for tens of thousands of years. So I think there's some kind of like almost psychic connection there.
Right. And I think as I get older, I don't know as a younger person having dogs, but as I get older, I'm really feeling like I feel this dog, and it's like, and then you start to understand why older people, like why they have dogs, because it really helps them, it's like, it keeps them from being lonely, and you can see why,
Well, and people with kids, if you have like a big piece of property and your kids play outside, I think it makes people feel better. They kind of keep an eye on us in a way that no other animal does.
Right.
I think probably horse people say that maybe there's some connection there, but that's similar. But dogs seem to be, they're loyal like nothing else.
Oh my goodness,
More than our friends.
Yeah, right. I love my dog more than most people, okay? So what is up next for you? So you've done this big thing. This book has been out for a month. It's getting great reviews on Amazon and Goodreads. It's all over, which I'm sure you're just so happy about.
Yeah, it's nice. You do these things and you hope that people actually read them, because then otherwise it seems like it was all a waste of time. But
right.
I'm not totally sure is the true answer. I don't know what the next one will be.
Well, wait, you have something coming up that got bought, right?
No.
Oh, I thought something. What did I read? Oh, The Life and Times of.
Oh, so that was a project that got bought. Hopefully, it turned into a movie, though that has not happened yet. It was optioned, and as these things often do, it like starts and then doesn't go anywhere. So maybe.
But, you never know. Yeah, that's a tough business right there.
Yeah, if you try and not think too much, if something happens, they're great, but you can't put any like true faith in it. It will drive you crazy and break your heart.
Right. Exactly. So you aren't really like working. I guess after working on something like this, it's kind of like you need a little breather, right?
Right. Well, yeah, it's like only been a month, so it's still very much the like promotion and sales period and trying to get the word out as much as possible. So it's sort of like a lot of my attention still focused on that. It's hard to. Also, it feels like I have two kids and they're 4 years apart, and like 2 years into having one kid, I never could have believed that I would have another one, and then enough time passes and you think, okay, I can do that again. I feel like books are sort of like that. You're like, that was hard.
that was a lot of work. You know how many kids I have?
It was hard and exhausting, and right now it feels like, boy, I don't know that it's not, I'm sure I will do another one, but what it is, I need some time.
Right, exactly. I have 6 children, by the way.
Oh my, whoa, all right. Well, so you know that better than most people.
Yeah, but everybody says, did you set out to have 6 children? No, I did not set it. At my first child, if somebody would have told me that, I would have been like, no, I'm not. I'm not doing that 6 times. So I think the books are I think that's what you said. The books are kind of the same way, You can't really wrap your brain. You're published, with your publisher, do you have a contract that you have to fulfill, or is this just like this book?
It's one, and yeah, they get the first right of refusal on whatever the next thing is, but they don't have to do it. We just have to show it to them first, and then if they decide to pass or wouldn't make an offer that we didn't think was good enough, then we can take it out to other people. But I was happy with. Dutton has been a good publisher. Everybody there I like a lot, so I'd be happy to work with them again.
Right, it's a great cover, and
yeah. I can't take any credit for that. They did amazing.
Let's see it again. I want to show everybody before we go. The cover of this book. Yeah, it's a great cover. Look at that. The crane thing. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, very graphic, and I mean, obviously they asked me if I liked it or not, but I didn't. All credit to them. I had no input other than thumbs up. It looks good.
Right, exactly. Well, I think you write military history really well, so maybe you'll find another story that's equally as interesting, and
There are so many of them out there.
there really are.
It's and especially with intelligence, because a lot of these things are secret and they sort of come out over time. They sort of leak out or they're declassified. And I mean, I do have a list of things that I'm interested in. I haven't really gone very deep on any of them, so it was a fun genre to work in. I certainly would do it again.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I want everybody to go read this book and go to your website. I love your website, and they can find the dog book there, and
right.
They can find it on Amazon too. I'll put all your links. Are you on tour right now, or are you just doing local stuff?
Just doing a few things here and there, so no official tour.
Nothing official. Okay, well, they can go to your website and check it out, and I'll have all your Facebook and Twitter and everything. So thank you for so much for talking to me today, Josh. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
And I'm so happy that I was able to, read that book. It really meant a lot to me just to read it. So
cool. I'm so happy to hear that. Let me know if your uncle digs in. I'm curious what sub he was on.
I will. I definitely will. I can get him on Facebook. So Have a great day, Josh.
Okay, you too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.